Hello, everyone. So I'm going to be reading Chapter 4 of Blood Genetics by the author, galrahobbitofxadia on Wattpad, so I hope you enjoy. Today we'll be discussing possible electrical fires that could occur in your planes and spacecraft and how to put them out. Keith began to zone as his teacher droned on. Then the lab table reserved for demonstrations lit suddenly on fire, and he yelped, pushing himself far away and nearly knocking his chair over in the process. "I'm missing a student. I think he's trapped inside." Keith shook himself to get rid of the memory flash. Across the room, Griffin had reacted in a similar way, and Keith heard snickers from his classmates. The teacher looked at them sharply. Kagane and Griffin, while the reactions may be appropriate in life-saving normal circumstances, likely would have died had that fire originated in their plane. First, they would have left the controls without putting the ship into autopilot, which could have resulted in a crash. Even if they caught the controls in time to save themselves from nosediving into the ground, they would have wasted precious time, which would have allowed the fire to spread, possibly uncontrollably. If they were not a safe distance from the ground, their plane would crash from a life-ending height, and even if they were close enough to the ground, a safe landing and escape from the fire that then consumed the plane would be near impossible. The teacher took a deep breath. Make sense? The whole class nodded, including Griffin and Keith, who were both a bright red. Why did it have to be fire? Anyway, moving on to the correct way to react. "Hey, Griffin." Griffin turned around as Lance chased after him, followed by Hunk. Great. These two again. What a bunch of clowns. Or at least Lance the clown, but Hunk was a follower, which was just as bad when he helped Lance with his antics. "What? What happened in class today?" "I freaked. It's not a big deal." "Really? Why'd you freak?" "My elementary school lit on fire once," Griffin told them dismissively. "I've got a bad knee-jerk reaction to fire. It's not a big deal. All the teachers and students got out." "Oh, was Keith there too?" "He had the same reaction." Griffin shrugged. Unless he was absent from school that day. Inwardly, he frowned. He had his own reasons for being especially scared of fire that Lance and Hunk didn't get to know about. But why would Keith? Didn't matter. All that mattered was figuring out what was so secretive about Keith's weird eyes that made Iverson threaten expulsion. Whatever the secret was, Griffin wanted in. After all, after what he'd done to let Iverson know about the problem, he deserved to be let into the inner circle, didn't he? Keith looked at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. "I need a haircut," he muttered out loud, tugging at his bangs. "I'm missing a student. I think he's trapped inside. I'll find him. A cure. No, it's too dangerous." Keith shook the memories away until he was seeing his own reflection again instead of flickering flames. He splashed water on his face to wake himself up. He'd been up last night, looking for a better spot to hide his knife. If Griffin could find it, that meant others could as well, and he didn't want to risk that someone a little more dangerous than Griffin would use it and pin any damage on him. He rounded the corner, considering putting it under his mattress, but that would be the first place anyone looked, wouldn't it? And he came to an abrupt halt. There was Colleen Holt, outside of his room, which was wide open. He ducked out of sight, going back around the corner and flattening himself against the wall, but too late. "Keith?" He cautiously slid out from his place, arms crossed. "What's going on?" "Nothing to worry about," Colleen soothed. "Who's in my room?" "It's just the commander, Iverson, but it's okay, Keith," she said in a soothing tone. "We're just checking that." There was a grunt from the room, and Iverson emerged with a knife. Keith's knife. "Found it. Wasn't under the mattress, Colleen, but the second place you suggested." Keith's vision tunneled on the knife. "Hey, that's mine!" "It's being confiscated," Iverson told him gruffly. "Cadets aren't supposed to have weapons on garrison grounds. It's garrison property now." "Who told you about it?" Keith felt a surge of wrath in his stomach. "Was it Griffin?" "Caught him snooping, did you?" "I'm not surprised. That boy needs to lay off." "But no. We found out from one of the homes. We figured you still had it." "Give it back!" Iverson glared at him. "Stand down, cadet." "No, that's my knife. It belonged—" He turned bright red and clamped his mouth shut, as he remembered that he had told them that he had nothing from his mother. "Belonged to who?" Miss Holt questioned softly. "Me!" "Belong" being the key term, Iverson growled. "Like I said, it's garrison property now. You should have turned it in when you first got here. Then we'd simply be holding it until you left the garrison. Now it's ours permanently." Keith's vision turned red, and he charged toward Iverson. Colleen Holt caught and held him with surprising strength that suggested she'd done this before. "Let me go!" "I'm trying to help you, Keith," she murmured in his ear. "Think about it. Attacking the commander will only ensure that you never get it back. In fact, it'll get you thrown out of the garrison sooner than you can throw the first punch. Promise you'll let it go?" Keith glared poisonously at both of them, but nodded in assent. Much as he hated it, Colleen Holt was right. She released him, and he sprinted down the hallway, blinking back tears of anger. What else would they take from him? "Keith?" Shiro looked around the edges of the building. Where are you, Keith?" "Guards in the movies are so stupid." Shiro grinned at Keith. "Why is that?" "All anyone has to do is look up. They're always hiding in a tree or something. If they just looked up, they'd see them. No one ever looks up." Shiro scanned the recreational trees and saw a pair of legs haul themselves up quickly, but not fast enough. He went to the tree and looked up to a pair of glittering purple eyes. "Unless you're a squirrel, you probably shouldn't be up there. The gardener gets really protective of his trees, and you don't want to see him angry. It's really hard growing them in the desert, so we don't want them dying." No reply, just bloodshot purple eyes, both begging him to go away and stay at the same time if that were possible. Shiro swung himself into the tree effortlessly, sitting next to Keith on the branch. Bad day, I guess, Keith muttered thickly, not meeting his eyes. He stared instead at the ground, and Shiro saw his shoulders tremble a little. Want to talk about it? Keith shrugged neutrally. Is it Griffin? No. Is it your teachers? Kinda. One of them set the desk on fire. Oh, yeah, I remember that. Mr. Harris, right? He did that for our class, too. Something about fire safety in a plane, right? Keith nodded with a sigh. Something like that. Your dad was a fireman, right? Yeah, he was a real hero. Shiro didn't say anything. He felt like Keith's openness was a flock of birds sitting next to him. If he moved too suddenly or at all, it would fly away in an instant. He had to sit still and observe quietly. Keith sighed. Everyone told him not to run into that building, but you couldn't tell him anything. Sounds like someone I know. A brief smile flitted across Keith's face. I swear I've been doing my homework, Shiro. Shiro held up his hands defensively, holding onto the branch with his knees. Okay, you've been doing your homework. His hands returned to hold him safely to the branch, and his feet swung idly. So, what does your teacher lighting a desk on fire have to do with Colleen Holt? Keith visibly stiffened, and Shiro worried that he scared away that openness, like the flock of birds that it was. Nothing? Why? She told me to find you, said that you were upset. Don't tell me why, just to go find you. Did Iverson push you about your mom? Keith scowled at the ground, and Shiro could see it as it was a knee-jerk reaction to keep tears back. No, he spat. You know you can tell me, Keith. You can trust me. Keith looked skeptical, as though he weren't sure that he could trust anyone, but he clenched his jaw. He took my knife, he said stiffly, and Shiro could see that scowl to hide the tears again. He took my knife away and told me I couldn't get it back because I didn't turn it in when I got here. Shiro blinked. Whoa, hold up, you had a knife here at the garrison? Yeah, my dad gave it to me, said it was my mom's. He scowled again, this time a real scowl, an angry scowl. Don't see how I didn't throw it out. She's a deadbeat. I don't want her stuff. And that's why you attempted to attack Iverson when he tried to take it, Shiro pointed out gently. Keith scowled even deeper. It's mine, and I didn't want him to have it. Keith, bud, it's okay, we'll get it back. How? He said it's property of the garrison now. Well, for starters, he can't hold it once you're 18, provided that it was left to you. That's 5 whole years from now. Shiro laughed. Trust me, it'll go a lot faster than you think. Listen, I'll look around, see if there's anything I can do in the meantime. I'm not going to steal it, but there's probably paperwork, forms and stuff that we can fill out to make an exception to the weapons rule. And then Iverson won't have an excuse to hold it from you. Shiro gave Keith a reassuring smile. Okay? Keith gave a small return smile. Okay. Shiro heard a stomping of feet and the angry yelling of the gardener. He slid out of the tree, closely followed by Keith, and gave Keith a gentle push in the direction of the garrison building. Run! Save yourself! Keith and Shiro bolted as the gardener gave chase to them, yelling about how hard it was to grow trees in the middle of the desert. A grin spread across Shiro's face as they looped across the lawn, and he looked sideways at Keith. Keith's grin rivaled his, and his laugh escaped his mouth as they slammed the door shut behind them and quickly turned to a different hallway, trying desperately to act normal and completely overdoing it. Shiro's grin remained on his face, a bit goofy when paired with his upright posture. He wasn't going to wipe it off just yet. It was the first time that he heard Keith laugh. Iverson peered over the scientist's shoulder as he scanned the results of the knife taken from Keith. The scientist, who Iverson remembered vaguely to be Professor Montgomery, looked considerably more alarmed and put off at this intrusion than Colleen Holt, and Iverson found himself wishing that she were a meteorologist as well as a biologist. What is it? Well, it's not too different from a typical tiger in general shape and size, but we're running a diagnosis on the metal, and it doesn't exist, sir. Not anywhere on Earth. Right, well, that's what I thought, Iverson growled and took the knife, marching back towards the plant lab. Colleen Holt was just exiting. You have a moment? No, I do not, sir, with all due respect, she said mildly. I'm late getting home as it is, and I don't want to leave Katie any longer. She's only 10, and I don't feel comfortable not knowing what she's up to. She frowned slightly when Iverson didn't move, to let her pass. I'm off duty now, sir. Iverson stepped aside. Right, well, my office first thing tomorrow. Results from the knife are in. He could see that the news piqued her curiosity, but she didn't back down. Tomorrow's a Saturday, sir. I know that you check on your plants on the weekend anyway. Just come by. All right, she said disapprovingly. I'll be there. He gave her a crisp nod, and she saluted. Have a good evening, Commander. You too, officer. She strolled down the hallway at a brisk pace, and Iverson let out a sigh, examining the knife in his hand. He frowned. It was odd that the meteorologist hadn't removed them. He picked carefully at the knot. What was underneath that Cadet Kagane was so determined to hide? Keith performed his usual sweep of his room, checking his belongings. He momentarily panicked when he couldn't find his knife, then remembered with a scowl that it was gone. His computer pinged with a message from Shiro, and he sat down at the desk. Good night. Keith smiled a little at that and unlocked the computer. Good night. A couple of seconds later, then another message popped up. Sleep tight. Another couple of seconds, then don't let the bedbugs bite. Keith grinned a little at that and powered off the computer. Changing into his pajamas, he pulled his chair up to the window, staring out at the stars. Orion. But as easy to spot as always, and there was Gemini to the northeast and Taurus on the northwest side. Keith opened the window and climbed up the drain pipe, hauling himself onto the roof. There was a nest of blankets and a telescope stolen from the astronomy lab. Keith peered through the lens of the telescope. It was trained on Pluto, and he could see a little moon orbiting. Was Pluto a planet? Keith had lost track of that argument. He looked again at the moon. Kerberos, he murmured, right there. He looked up at it again, and then searched for more constellations, easier to see from the roof than his window. The stars winked down at him as if scolding him for being out this late. He grinned. All right, I'll go to bed. Keith slid down the drain pipe, climbing back down through his window and closing it. He pulled back his covers and snuggled into bed with a sigh. Orion's belt was still visible through the window, and he smiled sleepily at it. Twinkle, twinkle, little star.